Muted at present, aren't I?
You are, Alan. All over to you.
Right, okay then. Well, as usual, just a brief statement first of all to explain where we are and what we're doing today. Good afternoon to members, officers and members of the public watching online. I am chairman of the committee. For those that don't know me, my name is Alan Sutcliffe, Councillor Alan Sutcliffe. Now, the government COVID-19 regulations enable us to meet remotely and to adhere to the government advice. This meeting is being live streamed on the council's website, a YouTube channel, I beg your pardon, and will be archived for later viewing. This way of working is obviously new to all of us, so please do bear with us. And I will start with a few procedural points that I need to list. Please use the virtual hand button on your screen to indicate that you wish to speak and then wait to be asked. Please do not speak over one another. However, you may interrupt if you, for instance, have joined the meeting late and you want to advise us of your arrival. Please turn your microphone on and off before and after speaking, just as you would in one of our normal face-to-face planning committee meetings. If you do not turn it off, the moderator will mute it for you, and basically to avoid background noise. Please also turn off your virtual hand button after speaking. I hope that we will manage to run the meeting without a break, but if we are not finished within 1.5 hours approximately, I would then be minded to call a short break. Can I now proceed with some introductions? Our legal advisor today is Alex Strickland. Our planning officer is Mr. Neville Watson, the planning manager, who will be presenting all 3 applications. Guy Close, Democratic Service Manager, is here today to oversee and assist in hopefully the smooth running of the meeting. Our committee officer is Vicky Davis, who will be taking the minutes of today's meeting, taking a roll call and a recorded vote if necessary when the occasion arises, and read out any statements or representations received. We also finally have Communications Officer Jenny Cornish, who will ensure the meeting is live streamed and recorded. I will now shortly proceed to the agenda, but just before we do that, I understand that it's necessary to take a roll call of members present, so I would ask Vicky Davis to now proceed with that exercise, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So if I start with you, Councillor Sutcliffe, you're present, and I'll call out everybody else. Councillor Brockbank.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Harbron.
Present.
Councillor Heseltine.
No, but I'm substituting for him.
All right.
I'm Councillor Soloway.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Soloway. Councillor Liss.
Present.
Councillor Place. Councillor Place, could you confirm your attendance? You need to unmute yourself, Councillor Place. Right, we'll come back to Councillor Place.
I think Councillor Place may have accidentally pressed the video at it.
Oh, there he is.
You now need to press the unmute.
You just confirm your attendance, Councillor Place, please.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
Present.
Councillor Rose.
Present.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Present.
Councillor Welsh. We got Councillor Welsh.
I don't
No.
think Councillor Welsh is in attendance, Vicky.
Okay, and obviously Councillor Soloway, you're substituting for Councillor Heseltine. Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Morell, and obviously he hasn't appointed a substitute, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's dealt with item 1 on the agenda for me, hasn't it? Item 2, the confirmation of minutes. The last meeting is going back a little way, members, 16th of March. Would anybody move approval and hopefully a seconder for those minutes, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to approve them or second them, whichever. Have they been approved?
It's approved. I'm waiting for a seconder.
I second that.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as read then. In which case, public participation. Do we have anybody in that category, Vicky, today?
Not today, Chairman, no, thank you.
Right then, another more important issue, perhaps declarations of interest. We have 3 meetings on the agenda today. Could anybody with an interest in any of those 3 meetings please declare that interest now? I personally don't have any, Vicky.
Okay.
No. Now, at the same time, I would like to deal with another similar issue. And
Chairman, I've raised my hand to declare an interest, please.
Thank you.
I just declare an interest on the application for the ref and whistle because I've represented applicants as their county councillor, and I also sat on the licensing appeal that dealt with this original application. So I won't be taking any part in the debate and I won't be taking any part in the vote, but I will be listening to the debate.
Okay, thank you for that contribution, Councillor Soloway. I'm sure Vicar Davis will record your interest. Moving on to the second types of interest, that's if that is lobbying interest, which I'd like to deal with at the same time. So, same question, has any member been lobbied in respect of any of these 3 applications? Councillor Pringle. Councillor Pringle, you have your hand up.
Yes, sorry. The ref and whistle being lobbied against.
Thank you. Anybody else been lobbied either for or against?
Yes, myself, but that's why I'm declaring an interest.
Yes, yeah, obviously a similar interest. I appreciate that. Right, on that basis, then we.
Chairman, we've got Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Brown, you've got a hand up on there, yes.
Yeah, I've been lobbied both about the ref and whistle, and if we go back to the original situation in Black Abbey Lane, I was lobbied about that one as well.
Thank you.
Is that against?
Both against.
Both against, thank you.
Councillor Brockbank, I've got your hand up on my screen.
Yes, I've had 2 emails of lobbying against the first application, the ref and whistle.
Fine, thank you very much for that contribution. Councillor Rose, I've now got your hand up.
Thank you. I've also been lobbied against for the ref and whistle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then finally, Councillor Liss.
No.
Sorry.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
I've been lobbied against the ref and whistle application, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was strange out because I didn't get a blue hand up from you, but you waved your hand to me. But anyway, it worked. That's the important thing. Councillor Liss, finally you.
I've been lobbied. I think most members have been lobbied by email against, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much.
Obviously the same application that Councillor Brockbank brought up.
Indeed.
I think also, if I could just come in, Councillor Sutcliffe, I think Councillor Harburn is also indicating that he may have been lobbied. Councillor Harburn, do you want to come in?
I haven't got a blue hand up for him, but yes, Councillor Harburn.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, same again, against for the ref and whistle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, if that's now the total declarations of interest, we'll move on to the schedule of plans. And the first application today is the ref and whistle one. It's 21411. So I would now ask Mr. Watson to make his presentation for that application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If you can just bear with me while I pull the presentation up. Sorry, Chairman, I'm having trouble getting the PowerPoint dragged onto the Zoom screen.
A matter I can help you with. Can Guy perhaps assist you?
Guy, do I press the share screen on the bottom tab?
Yeah, you should be set up as a co-host of the meeting, Neville. And then you should be able to use the tab at the bottom to share screen. You should be able to share your presentation.
I'm getting a message saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
Just have another go, Neville. You're set up as the co-host of the meeting. So if you go to the bottom of the screen, bring up the shared screen.
Right.
Excuse me, Chairman. Alex, the legal officer, has got his hand up. Did you?
It's not showing on my screen as his hand up. Yes. Does he
Right.
Chairman?
Yes, right.
Please.
It's just appeared now, Alex.
Excellent. Chairman, can I just remind members that they need to be present for the whole of the item before voting on it? It's just the usual rules, but they need to be present for all of the item. So if members happen to lose connection during part of the item, they will not be able to vote on it. That's just to protect the integrity of the decision-making process. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that contribution, but I think members are well aware of that from our trial meetings. Right, Mr. Watson, are you any nearer?
Can members actually see the PowerPoint now?
No, I can't.
I think the difficulty might be that he's showing as co-host, but you are showing as a co-host, Neville.
Yeah. It's just I've got the share screen now. Hang on a minute.
I've got a black screen now with a load of applications on it.
Looks much more promising.
Sorry about this, Chairman. I've opened up my...
That looks promising, Neville.
Does it? Right. Right. Have you now got the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. Neville.
Seem to have the PowerPoint in the normal mode that we would have it on at a face-to-face meeting.
Yes, okay. Right, well, this is an application to vary conditions 2 of the approved plans and condition 8 about noise management on the previous application that was approved on the 19th of February 2019. The application site is on Court Lane, so that's Newmarket Street. Benjamin's Opticians on the corner. That's going up Court Lane with the Devonshire Public House behind you. And the application site is where the cursor is showing on Court Lane. So that's Benjamin's Opticians, 9 to 11 Court Lane, Newmarket Street. That's just to put members in context of where we're actually talking about. The proposals are for some alterations internally to the premises. That's the ground. There's a ground floor bar with an entrance off Court Lane. Court Lane's running left to right across the screen, and there is a first floor lounge and seating area. This is the roof plan, and the purpose, if members will recall, we ended up with a situation where members imposed conditions which restricted the ability to open the windows on the front elevation of 9 to 11 Court Lane, and therefore we imposed a condition that required the approval of air conditioning units. Obviously, at this stage, the applicant has actually installed the units. And you can see from the screen in front of you that the air conditioning units are in the valley between the main ridge on the frontage and the ridge to the rear. And you'll see from the left-hand side photograph where the arrow points to the air conditioning unit. Well, there's 3 of them at least. These are photographs looking, that's effectively standing outside 9 to 11 Court Lane, looking up towards Otley Road. Otley Street. Providence Quarter is on the left-hand side. That's a slightly more aerial view, and you'll see that the windows in the first floor lounge are obscured, and the windows are actually fixed, so you can't open them. And the air conditioning units are sitting behind that ridge, the valley in between. That's a view turning around, looking left back towards the Devonshire Inn. And that is a photograph of the Ref and Whistle before it was actually converted to the microbar. That's looking from towards Court Lane. You've got the Indian restaurant on the left-hand side there. There's a tapas bar there. I believe hairdressers in between. And that's a view standing with the back to the front door looking out towards the Providence Quarter. Chairman, there's 2 elements to this application. One is to obviously seek retrospective approval of the air conditioning units, and the other one, it relates to the noise management plan, because members will recall that the situation was that we ended up with a position where it was effectively going to be intended to be background music, and that's what the noise management plan wanted. More recently, the applicant, before we went down into shutdown, had hosted a number of events, most commonly on a Sunday afternoon with live acoustic musicians, which obviously fell outside the scope of the noise management plan as existed at the time we approved the application last year. I'll just go back to the photographs there. So that's an aerial view of the Ref and Whistle as it has now been converted. Chairman, just before I move on, can I actually draw members' attention to well, one email that I understand was circulated to all members this morning from a Mr. Ayres, and that raised issues about potential noise from the acoustic events. If I can take members to the officer report, and specifically if I can take you to paragraph 6.2 of the consultation element of the report, and that refers to the advice that we've had from the environmental health officer, which suggested that it should be conditioned that there is a live music sound level from the premises shall not exceed the representative background sound level by more than 5 decibels. In the light of the representations that have been made and the advice of the environmental health officer, if I can take members to the proposed conditions, which repeat many of the conditions that were on the original permission. And specifically, if I can take you to condition 8, which reads, live music shall be restricted to acoustic musicians only with no amplifications. All windows and doors of the premises shall be closed during performances. Chairman, what I would suggest in the light of late representations and the advice of the Environmental Health Officer, I'm recommending to members to allow me to modify condition 8 to effectively add in the advice from the Environmental Health Officer in paragraph 6.2 and add it into condition 8. That's as much as I want to update at this stage, Chairman. The recommendation is to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Following the customary format, at this point we look for a parish council rep, which I don't think we have in this case. And then,
excuse me, Chairman. Yes, we do. We have Councillor Gordon Bell from Skipton Town Council, who has indicated his wish to speak to the meeting.
Thank you, Vicky. That's coming subsequent to your
yes, it has,
to me. Right. Well, if the gentleman in question cares to speak now, the floor is his. Do you arrange it, or does Guy have to arrange it?
Councillor Gordon Bell, if you just wish to unmute yourself, but you've just done it now.
Yes, so I've done that now.
Okay, over to you, Councillor Bell.
Right, thank you. Well, in the beginning, in 2019, we approved the license for the ref and whistle, and then again they got the variation in 2020, referencing music, and we put on that thing that it says that when we looked at the thingy, that we objected to the agreed to the 60 decibels and was applied, and we suggested that it should state that. But also with the air conditioning, if it's going to affect the people around, but I don't know whether I omitted it or never seen it, but what about Alma Terrace, which is at the back of the ref and whistle? Now they must have some things to say about these if they're going to put these air conditioning units up, which they already have done, but I never seen anything to say that they wanted to do that. And I think it's wrong that the people should just go ahead and do these things without telling us. And I think not just as a town council, but exactly where it is. It's in historic part of town, and it, you know, there things should be done properly, as we all know. And I believe that for the air conditioning units, if you can open the windows, then it's a good idea. But I think for the music, you've got to think of all the other people. If it's on a Sunday afternoon, it may be different, but I don't know. In this present climate, I don't know. Nobody's going to hear anything, so we're not going to have any music from anywhere. So I think that the air conditioning units, I don't think we can do anything about that now, but for the music, if it's toned down to the 60 decibels, then that would be fine, as I applied for in the beginning. Okay. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you very much for your contribution. That we do have another speaker to follow, but I notice in the meantime, Alex Strickland, you've got your hand up. Do you perhaps wish to say something before I move on?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to remind members for the record, given that this site has been before the committee previously, that members must treat the matter with an open mind as usual. Just to put that on the record for members. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that contribution. I would like to think that we do this with an open mind. Now then, moving on to the objector, Mr. Stephen Burrows, if you can arrange for him to speak, Guy.
Stephen Burrow is not in attendance at the meeting, but he has asked if a statement could be read out at the meeting. So I'll hand over to Vicky Davis, and Vicky will read out the statement that has been prepared by Mr. Burrow. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you very much. Over to you, Vicky.
Okay, thank you. This is a submission on behalf of the local residents. We believe committee members should have the true full facts before them so that they can come to a reasoned judgment and not just be presented with details that support the case officer's recommendations. We hope that the following can help you in your deliberations. Environmental health. Due to a lack of a suitable monitoring position, there will be no sound limits set for the proposed live music. Andrew Dent has confirmed that there has been no monitoring of the premises since it opened with its premises licence on the 24th of June 2019. Monitoring was only carried out when the premises were used to serve alcohol under temporary event notices prior to this date. No monitoring has been carried out from residential properties. Officers did state that they were surprised at how far sound travels on Court Lane. No acoustic study has been performed. The bar has been run in a completely different manner since gaining the premises licence, with little regard for planning and licensing conditions or the applicant's own noise management plan. Disposal of waste products in public storm drain. An official Environment Agency investigation has shown that the applicant has been polluting the local Waller Hill Beck for many months by pouring commercial and cleaning waste down the public storm drain. This is a far more serious offence than the lack of permit presented in the case officer's report, and is just one example of the effects of the applicant's "I'll do what I want" attitude has on this locality. External cooling and heating units. The uncropped version of a photograph presented by the case officer would have provided members with the clearest view of the external units installed on the roof without planning permission. The original photograph clearly highlights two issues with the installation. One of its units crosses the roof boundary line with the property next door. All three units have been installed facing west, directly facing the immediate residential properties. Rotating the units 90 degrees so that they face north towards car parks and not directly at residential properties would provide the following benefits. Reduction of noise possibilities for nearby residents, reduction in the ugly visual impact on this conservation area roofscape for nearby residents. It would keep the units within the applicant's own roofline boundaries. It would satisfy the requests of Councillor Place and Chairman Sutcliffe at the original planning meeting that any ventilation units installed on the roof should not face west. The successful ventilation solution would finally enable the applicant to fully comply with condition 3, brackets, make windows unopenable, close brackets, and allow the door to remain closed except for access to greatly reduce easily avoidable noise nuisance. The noise management plan only contains details of just one of these air conditioning units, the least noisy one. Why have the other two been omitted? The case officer uses residential paraphernalia to justify the external unit's installation in a conservation area. The accompanying photos show that the external units are clearly the most significant items installed on the roofscape, and there is minimal other paraphernalia. Does this set a precedence in the conservation area that could encourage proliferation? Items on the roof of the Providence Quarter apartment block supply important telecommunication services for the town of Skipton. They are certainly not residential paraphernalia and are only on this building as it is the highest feasible structure in this part of Skipton. The case officer provides details of businesses up to some distance from the applicant's premises, but provides scant detail of the residential development immediately opposite. The Candelisa development consists of a high concentration of 46 residential properties. Some of these residential properties are just 12 metres from the applicant's premises. This is almost half the usual 20-metre primary window to primary window distance of a housing development. Brackets, distances supplied by planning, close brackets. The high concentration of residential dwellings does constitute a noise-sensitive area that is very close to the applicant's premises. Government guidelines recognise that where existing noise-sensitive locations already experience high noise levels, brackets, which we do and accept, close brackets, a development that is expected to cause even a small increase in the overall noise level may result in a significant adverse effect occurring. Residents already suffer avoidable noise disturbance from the bar due to the entrance door and windows being left permanently open for most of the year, as well as from increasing socialising outside the bar. This is having an effect consistent with the lowest observed adverse effect level as detailed in the noise policy statement for England documentation. The government's recommended action here is to mitigate and reduce to a minimum, not add even more noise. This problem will only be exacerbated by the introduction of live music without a fundamental change in attitude of both the applicant and planning enforcement. A great deal has been removed from this plan since it was first presented to planning in January 2019. Each new version provides fewer noise mitigation measures than the previous version, whilst countenancing greater noise disturbance. This completely negates the supposed purpose of an NMP as defined in the NPSE and government noise guidance. A key worrying omission is that adjacent use section has now been removed altogether. Its removal clearly indicates that the applicant no longer acknowledges the presence of residential apartments immediately opposite and the effect his business will have on the residents and their amenity. It is also clearly indicated that the applicant and his agent are no longer confident that the mitigation measures left in this NMP are sufficient to prevent significant impact upon neighbours as previous versions of the NMP very clearly claimed. The NMP states that the request for live music is in response to customer demand. However, there has been no supporting comments or petitions to this effect on this application. Ongoing conditions. Condition 3, it's appreciated that this has been corrected to include noise disturbance from open windows. However, the permanently open door is an even greater issue with respect to avoidable noise nuisance disturbing residents immediately opposite. If a successful conclusion can be reached regarding ventilation for the premises, there is no reason why a condition to keep the door closed except for access could not be attached for the same reason as the windows need to be made unopenable. Condition 4, clarification would be appreciated to confirm if projections overhang the footway includes waste bins, plant pots and street signage in order to protect pedestrians and other highway users. All the planning conditions are deemed to have passed the NPPF 6 tests, which clearly confirm that they are necessary, relevant to the development to be permitted and enforceable. Conditions are meaningless if they are ignored and unenforced, and they do not provide the protections they were designed to do as a consequence. So far, residents have rejected requests to bring the applicant back for a new licensing review or to raise official environmental health complaints. as they do not wish him to lose his licence and for the bar to be closed. Residents have been uncomfortable and greatly dislike having to raise issues. They have abhorred the need for evidence. Hostile reactions by the applicant when genuine issues have been raised have not been helpful. Is mediation a better way? All residents wish for is the protection that committee members deemed necessary at the original planning meeting through planning conditions and the applicant's own noise management plan before even more noise is introduced through live music and poorly positioned aircon. Residents have not received these protections. That's the statement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for reading that out, Vicky. Moving on in our usual format, it's now the turn of the applicant or applicant's agent. And I believe we have a Mr. William Arkwright. Is he still around?
Mr. Cartwright's in attendance. Mr. Cartwright, if you'd just like to unmute yourself.
Yep, I've done it. Thank you. William Cartwright on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Greaves. Residential neighbours absolutely have the right to a good quality of life and should not be subject to levels of noise that give rise to adverse impacts on health and quality of life, in line with planning policy and the noise policy statement for England. However, residents of busy town centres like Skipton, who benefit from a range of bars, restaurants and shops within a short distance, cannot reasonably expect complete tranquility. The applicant has installed 2 air conditioning units to allow their windows to be kept shut, and a further external drinks cooling unit because their initial internal system proved ineffective. Following consultation with the owner of the neighbouring hotel, the 3 units were carefully sited in the roof valley and are not easily visible from public vantage points. The 3 units were brand new in installation, operate quietly and efficiently, are a common feature of urban environments, and are essential for the premises to function whilst keeping windows shut. I'd also like to add to that I don't think rotating them 90 degrees or 180 degrees is likely to make much difference, if any. To bolster business, the applicant had employed local folk musicians, Ross and Friends, to play live acoustic music every other Sunday between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. The band consists of 2 persons who play a violin and a guitar without any amplification, and the variation of the noise management plan sought is intended to allow this activity to continue. As your officers have confirmed, although no official noise complaints have been made to environmental health, concerns raised by planning and licensing have prompted monitoring visits, and these found that noise was not excessive, unreasonable, or of a level that would cause nuisance, and I'm confident this will continue to be the case. However, in the unlikely event that significant noise issues do arise, the local authority has powers to resolve issues under environmental and licensing legislation, even if the premises were found to be operating within the terms of the planning permission. I urge you to support this fledgling business and accept your officer's carefully considered and balanced recommendation that is supported by your environmental health officer and noise expert, having investigated neighbours' concerns and undertaken noise monitoring. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your contribution, Mr. Cartwright. Following the usual format, we didn't have a ward councillor this morning. Do we have anyone present now, Vicky?
Not to my knowledge,
No.
Chairman, no.
No. Okay, in that case then we'll move to the debate. And if anybody wishes to speak, I'll look out for his blue hand going up. Councillor Brown, you're number 1 in the queue.
I think Councillor Habram was before me, but he's just doing it by showing his vision, so I'll let him go first.
Is he? Sorry. I've not got anything showing on my screen from Councillor Habram.
Sorry, Chairman. Yeah, I was wishing to speak, but I'm not au fait with this technology at the moment.
Right. Well, in that case, if it's all right with Councillor
If it's all right with Councillor Brown, of course. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Chairman, yes, this is a fledgling business, and we need to start supporting these businesses because they're going to start going bust very quickly. Presumably, on a Sunday afternoon when this acoustic music is going to be played, was the planning application for the flats opposite, was it deemed that they're not allowed to play the Bang & Olufsen out loud? So it seems to me that the residents can play music as loud as they want, but the bar that's going to have the windows shut, it's not going to be allowed to play the music at all. I'm in favour of this application, so I'm going to go with the officer's recommendation and vote for approval. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. Councillor Brown, over to you now.
Well firstly, Councillor Sutcliffe, a question, and then what I want to say. The question really concerns the aerial view on page 4 of our pack that was given in advance of the meeting, the one that shows the roof line of the building. Could I just check a fact that has that picture actually been cropped as was stated in some of the lobbying information, and or is that not the case? Has that picture been cropped? And I'd like to know why, if it has been.
Fine, I can't answer that, but I'm sure Mr. Watson will be able to answer it. So when you're ready, Neville, perhaps you could respond.
Chairman, as far as I'm aware, that is a straightforward photograph taken by the case officer from the only vantage point that they could find to actually photograph the air conditioning unit in the valley between the front, well, in the valley between the front ridge and the back ridge. To the best of my knowledge, it is an honest and genuine photograph.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, the reason I'm asking that is we have a second photograph submitted by the objectors indicating where the air conditionings are immediately above the line of that picture, and it seems to be an identical picture. So I think it's quite an important fact to be clear about. I don't want the committee misled about whether that's a straightforward picture or whether it's a cropped picture. So I'm taking it that we're being told it's a straightforward picture and there's no cropping. Is that absolutely clear?
Yes, I think that's
okay. That's fine. If that's the case, then the second thing I want to do is just make some comments on the thing. Firstly, I think we're not here to decide on whether it's being the licensing matters. We're here to decide on the planning matters, and we're here to decide on the changes, not the original application. And I'm pleased that Mr. Watson has suggested that we include the conditions from 6.2 under, I think it's condition 8. And I'd like to formally propose that we do that because I think you're going to need a. So I think it's question. So yes, it's either 8 or 9, isn't it? So if we could, I'd like somebody to formally propose that, and I'd like to do that. The second thing I'd just like to discuss is this business of turning the air conditioning units at 90 degrees, because a good point has been made that in terms of the noise and the smell and the disruption to neighbours, it would be relatively easy to limit that by turning these air conditioning units at 90 degrees. Now, I know the objection might be put that they're already in place and have been installed, but that's not our concern. Yeah. Our concern is that an application comes in to place something. Where should it be placed? What is appropriate? What is reasonable? If they've already preceded our decision by doing something, that's not our problem. So my second thing I'd like to suggest is that those air conditioning units are at 90 degrees to the drawing submitted.
Thank you. The application is seeking retrospective approval, and any work carried out without approval, of course, is always work at risk. Members will no doubt bear that in mind today. Councillor Pringle, I've got your hand showing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the planning officers for sending us a pack of hard copy photographs, because it was a lot easier to look at those than look on the screen in the presentation. So thank you, that was a good idea. But for the avoidance of doubt, because this is all on tape, I am 100% convinced that Councillor Brown's question about the photograph being cropped is true. The objector submitted a photograph showing the view from their flat and showing air conditioning units on the roof. and basically said this is in a conservation area, my view is important, and it would appear to me that our planning officer chopped that photograph and submitted it to committee members in an attempt to persuade us that you couldn't see the photograph from anywhere. So let's be absolutely clear. Mr. Watson said the photograph hadn't been cropped. I believe that it has been cropped, and I would ask you to make your decision based on that information. This is a really difficult application because, as Councillor Harbron has said, it's in the middle of town, and you cannot build a house in the middle of town and expect the same rules as a house in the countryside. I personally have no problem with the air conditioning units. I think they're ugly, but I think on balance, they do a job, which means I think even some of the objectors have said, if you've read all the objections, we will accept the air conditioning units. Maybe Councillor Brown has a point about turning them round. The issue for me here is the noise. And I don't think we've come up with a solution yet, because as much as I would like to say, Mr. Watson, putting back in condition 6.2 is perfect, if you actually read all the reports, we can't put back in condition 6.2 because all the reports and all the objections are about the fact that we cannot monitor the noise levels from anywhere. We can't monitor them from the street, and we can't monitor them from the objectors. So our own environmental health officer, if you read his report, said, I wanted to put in the condition about noise levels, but I can't because I can't monitor them. So that makes that condition wholly unenforceable. So sadly, Mr. Watson's solution of sticking back in 6.2 is not a solution. The choice we have, as I see it, is either to pass it or fail it on the noise. I'm happy to pass the air conditioning, but the noise, if we cannot monitor it, and it appears that we cannot, on balance, I would say that we don't pass it. And I recognise Councillor Harbron, and it is in a town centre, but if we cannot measure the noise, the other thing is, the conditions as they stand talk about a licence, I think 7 days a week until 9 o'clock at night. That is wholly different to what we are being told by Mr. Cartwright. All we want to do is play music on a Sunday afternoon up until 6 o'clock every other week. Now, if that's what the developer actually wants, let's approve that. Every other week on a Sunday, finishing at 6. I have no problem with that at all. But once you get into the 9 o'clock at night scenario, if the man opposite's putting his child to bed at 8:30 and somebody opens the door to go into the pub, the child's going to get woken up. What they've said they want. Why don't we give them every other week on a Sunday, or indeed every week on a Sunday, 3 till 6?
Thank you for that contribution. I'll ask Mr. Watson to respond in a minute, but just a couple of personal comments. Firstly, I think the orientation of the air conditioning units is a red herring. I think the transmission of sound is more dependent on the direction of the prevailing wind than the orientation of the units. In answer to your concern, which we all share, that we seem to be having difficulty in monitoring the noise, I would have thought that given the prior notice, that Environmental Health could have got a road closure notice to give them the facility to take the sound readings from the road. Anyway, Mr. Watson, I think perhaps if you can contribute now before I go to the next speaker.
Chairman, thank you for letting me come back on this one. It's not that we're not there to monitor it. It's just that if we add into condition 8 the advice in paragraph 6.2, that gives us a background noise level, or the, how is it actually phrased? Paragraph 6.2 is saying that the representative background noise level shall not be exceeded by more than 5 dBA. That potentially is something that could be enforced. The point that's been made in the conclusions on paragraph 9/16, Environmental Health have been consulted and have confirmed that they have no objection to the proposed introduction of live non-amplified music and consider that current measures are sufficient to ensure that residents are not adversely affected. If there was a background thing, that will be dealt with by licensing. So all I'm inviting members to do is expand on condition 8 as drafted, to take on board the issues that have more recently been raised about noise, and paragraph 6.2 added into condition 8, I think is sufficient for us to retain control and have enforceable conditions.
Fine, thank you for that contribution. Councillor Shuttleworth, I've got your hand up next.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I agree considerably with what Councillor Pringle has said, that low-level non-amplified music would be quite acceptable during limited hours. But it seems to me, from what was approved initially back in February of last year, where the application stated there would be low-level recorded background music to create a relaxed ambience below the level of conventional speech. Now, this application is seeking to go much further than that level that was accepted when we granted initial permission. I accept that during the day there may be quite a justifiable case for the level of the music to be slightly higher. It does worry me that acoustic music, it depends on how many people are contributing to that at any one time. And I have known personally of choruses which involve members of the public who are in the premises, particularly, just give one example, the Irish song Wild Rover, then it can get quite raucous. So we just need to consider that in some, well, with some concern. I would certainly seek for the premises to be closed at 9 p.m, as was indicated in the approved scheme, the initially approved scheme. I'm quite happy about restricting acoustic music to a single participant during certain hours up to, shall we say, 6 p.m, something like that. But I think we've got to be very careful on this, because it strikes me that the use of these premises has grown. It's become greater and greater and greater than initially approved. And we need to get a handle on this and keep the control. I'm not wanting to close the place down at all, but the use of the premises has considerably deviated from what was stated in the initial intention when planning application for change of use was first granted.
Thank you very much for that. And I've got Councillor Brown, Councillor Pringle, but you've both spoken once already, so I'm going to jump to Councillor Liss.
Thank you, Chairman. A few things. I mean, Councillor Brown brought up one of the points I was going to make, and that is the line that's drawn between what the licensing committee needs to rule on and what we as a planning committee agree on. As far as I'm concerned, we agree, we pass a planning application with various guidelines within that, and then once we've done that, it's if that agreement is in any way flaunted or whatever else, a member of the public can complain to the licensing committee. We set the rules. The enforcement of them is down to a different department of this council. The second, probably more serious point that I've got is we have a member today who's made an accusation, Councillor Pringle's made an accusation that we have a picture that has been amended so that we don't actually see as a committee a true representation of what is in fact in place. I would like to hear what the legal view on that is. I'm really very, very, very concerned about that.
I would share your concern there, and as luck would have it, our legal advisor has got his hand up right now, so perhaps I'll ask him to respond to your concern.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was actually going to pick up on that point. I think that members need to be careful. I think that members will accept that the officer reports that are presented to them are presented in good faith, with all the relevant information provided in those reports. I think it is perhaps rather unfortunate that some of the comments from Councillor Pringle seem to indicate that the planning officer was doctoring a photograph for a particular reason. And I would just like to remind members that these reports are put together in good faith with the information that officers have available on a professional basis, and the reports are provided in a balanced way for members to take a decision on. The committee has already had the assurance from the planning manager that there is no issue in respect of that photograph, and I hope that that concludes the matter and is of assistance to members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for your opinion. And I've got Councillor Brockbank as a first-time speaker here, so I think you're next in line, Councillor Brockbank.
Thank you, Chairman. There was an awful lot of late information there from one of the objectors, and I do hope that I've managed to clean and take into account everything that was said. It would have been nice to have had that information a bit earlier, and so that I could go over it and make sure that I haven't missed anything. I don't think I have, but I think we're going to come across this more and more. The government have said that more development, residential development, is going to happen in town and city centres. We've seen that in the media very recently, and I can see the conflict coming up in the future. And what is posing in my head, the question that is posing in my head is that if you move into a town centre or a city centre, what is the reasonable amount of disturbance that you would expect, that you would accept, and what is expected? And that can be a very personal thing, and so I'm struggling a little bit with that, because I wouldn't want to live in a town or city centre, and I certainly wouldn't if I had children. Lots of benefits, but if I had children, I would be thinking about, as was said, about putting them to bed and having your windows open and the noise. This application, there's an awful lot about noise in it, which is understandable. The applicant has installed the air conditioning units because of the restrictions that was put on by this planning committee or by Craven District Council in order to comply with the objections. Now, okay, that the air conditioning units might, whether or not the air conditioning units rotated would make any difference, I don't know, because I have not got that technical expertise. So we've heard one person say, the applicant's agent say that it wouldn't make any difference. We've heard our chairman say that his opinion. So I in a way, I've just got to go with my own thoughts on that. There is is it called the Devonshire? There's a pub around the back. If looking at the looking at the initial plate that was the drawing that was given to us, there is a pub or hotel, it's listed as number 25. So I don't know whether or not that hotel has a bar and whether they play music. As Councillor Pringle says, it's a very difficult. It is a very difficult application because we're talking about different people's difference in opinions and people's different expectations as to what they think is acceptable noise and disturbance and what is unacceptable. I don't know what else the applicant can do. Certainly, I agree with Councillor Brown saying that condition 8 should include 6.2. Anything that can help to limit the amount of noise and disturbance for the objectors, I think is beneficial. I think I don't know if we've said anything about the door being kept closed, if that is in any of the conditions. I'd just like confirmation on that. And I have asked the question of the officers before the meeting during last week whether or not the hotel does play music, and the officers didn't know whether that's the case or not. I'm tempted to support the proposal of the officer's recommendation with the changes to that condition 8 with 6.2 included in it. But I'd like some clarification on whether or not we've said that the door needs to be kept closed. That's it for the moment. Thank you. That's enough.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Watson, would you like to hopefully quickly answer that last question from Councillor Brockman?
If I can just come back on that one, I mean, I think the difficulty is that if you attempted to say that the door shall remain closed, what do you end up doing? Waiting for the guitarist to finish his song before somebody can walk in and have them, you know, visitors, customers standing outside because he can't open the door when the music's being played. There's no control over the door being closed. I mean, the intention obviously was that, you know, while the music's on, but you can't switch music on and off just when customers are coming and going and arriving. I think that's a little unrealistic. Coming back to Councillor Brockbank's position on the issue about adjoining hotels, I mean, one thing that members have got to be aware of is that if the Devonshire Hotel or the Albion or any of the other commercial premises around there decided to put a jukebox into their premises, planning authority would have absolutely no control over it. And the issue ultimately would be that at the end of the day, if there is a statutory noise nuisance being created, environmental health pick it up or the licensing authority pick it up.
Thank you very much for that contribution. All right. We've now got a situation where nobody else seems to indicate to speak other than Councillors Brown and Pringle who are wishing to speak for a second time. I'd like to go back to Councillor Harbron now and ask him if, as ward representative, he would be prepared to move anything in the light of what he's listened to since he last spoke. Councillor Harbron.
Chairman, I move officer's recommendation with the amendments. If it's right. And I think Councillor Rose wanted to speak, by the way. Thank you.
Just put a hand up now. Yes, thank you. Councillor Rose, yes, you're a first-time speaker, so I'll take you first.
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate that we are to consider this application separate from the original application that was put in place. I am aware that also that particular corner of town does contain several establishments and that noise levels are going to be inevitable. And thirdly, if you choose to live in such a spot, you would take on board that it's not going to be the peace and quiet, perhaps, of living on the edge of a village up the dale. I do take all that on board. What does concern me, and this is an issue that has risen in many other applications, is that we consider with great care an original application. We spend time putting this, considering an application, allowing it, putting it through, whatever we want to say, and then we find that the applicant starts to push the envelope, or whatever we want to say, that they start, if you like, pushing against what we have agreed with careful, as I say, consideration. And I'm just a bit concerned that this particular applicant informed us that it was to be something like a gentleman's club, a quiet space at the end of the day to enjoy a convivial pint with your friends, talk about the work, talk about the day, and to go home. It now sounds to me that he's pushing for a very different style of establishment. And I do appreciate that I'm not to look back, but I just want to voice my opinion on that particular matter. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rose. I now have it moved for approval. Is any member minded to second it? Councillor Brockbank, were you perhaps in favour of it towards the end of your presentation?
Yes, I'll second it now that the
Matters have been
condition
clarified.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to go to the vote soon, and I've got Councillors Brown, Pringle and Shuttleworth are all wishing to speak for the second time. So once you've spoken, I will go to the vote, and I'll take them in the order in which I have on my screen now. Councillor Brown, but I would ask you to be as brief as possible, please.
Two things. Firstly, I want to make it clear that I'm voting on the assumption that the officer's statement about the picture is correct. And if there's anything wrong with that, I'd like it corrected now before I vote, because it's to be obviously a serious matter. So it'd be much better if it was corrected if it was wrong now rather than we vote before that. The second thing is just this business about orientation of the air conditioning units. My concern wasn't that a folk singer's sound might come up through the air conditioning units and disturb the neighbours. My concern is those air conditioning units themselves make noise. If they're directly pointing at the neighbours, the clatter of the air conditioning units, which the neighbours' presentation highlighted to us, if it's directly pointed at the neighbours, the smell of beer, the noise from the place goes directly to the neighbours. That's why I would like us to vote separately on whether we ask that those are turned at 90 degrees. And that's a formal proposal that I'd look for a seconder for.
I hear what you say, Councillor Brown, but my own personal experience of this is that whether you're downwind or upwind from an air conditioning unit is more important than whether it's actually pointing at you or not. Anyway, that's a personal opinion, no more than that. Right, Councillor Pringle, quick comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an alternative proposal which may affect how people vote on the first proposal. My proposal is, as ugly as they are, I have no problem with the air conditioning units, but I will second Councillor Brown's proposal that he just put forward to turn them, if that's what the objectors want. So I have no problem with them because they keep the sound in the building. But I think Councillor Shuttleworth was right. I think Councillor Rose was right. We all have concerns that there's a level which is acceptable. And I think that there's a deal to do where we give them live music without accompaniment up until 6 o'clock at night, twice a week. So my proposal is that the condition is they can have live music from 12 o'clock at dinner time till 6 o'clock at night on 2 days a week. And finally, I am going to say it again, the condition we have in our report, in 6.5, our environmental health officer saying we cannot measure the decibels. So how can we have our environmental health officer saying the condition's unenforceable and us lot sat here saying let's put the condition back in that our own officer is saying is unenforceable? But let's forget that. I'd like to propose, if somebody would kindly second it if they want to, that we pass the air conditioning, and on the noise thing, it's 2 days a week, and it's between dinner time and 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Watson to comment on that, and then I'll come to Councillor Shuttleworth, and then I'm going to vote. Mr. Watson.
Chairman, we've got to obviously judge the application before us. I think that the difficulty with limiting it to 2 days a week would leave us with a significantly difficult enforcement situation, because unless you said you can only have music on a Saturday or a Sunday, which may not be what they want, what you would end up with was potentially, well, we'll have Monday, acoustic music on a Monday night because you're holding a small intimate party in the pub, and you've got a friend that's coming along to entertain you. And then what happens when you end up with the acoustic event on a Friday night, and possibly a Saturday night, and possibly a Sunday night, and you've got an unenforceable situation. I appreciate the point that's been made, but we've got to judge the application as it stands. And the point about the environmental health thing, what the issue with environmental health was, is that they said in paragraph 6.5 of the report, for practical reasons, monitoring cannot be undertaken on the highway, and thus the setting of a specific noise level is not feasible. But that's not what they are advising, is that the live music is restricted to 5 dBA above the representative background levels. So that's measurable and enforceable. Because we ended up in a situation when we originally dealt with this application, is that there was going to be effectively the ability to have noise monitoring, that if you exceeded a certain decibel limit, and members will recall that this was raised on the last application we dealt with for the Gracious Swan, about how you were going to control music on a moving boat. I'm giving you the option that if you put paragraph 6.2 into condition 8, that is enforceable.
Right, thank you very much for that contribution. Councillor Shuttleworth, very briefly, please, because I want to go to a vote now.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll change my recommendation and recommend a change to Councillor Pringle's recommendation that no restriction be made on the days of live music, but nevertheless, the timing should be terminated at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Problem here, I sense, is that we have to determine the application presented to us. So, Vicky Davies, could you perhaps confirm the situation? I believe I have it moved and seconded as per the officer's recommendation, but can you confirm that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's been moved and seconded that the officer recommendation is approved, along with the contents of section paragraph 6.2 being included into condition 8.
8. Yeah, all right. Okay, so am I okay to go for a vote on that motion now then?
Yes, Chairman. That was
right.
the first recommendation that was moved and seconded.
Okay,
So
all right. Let's go to a vote now. It'll have to be a recorded vote, so it's over to you really now.
So when I call your name out, then if you can just say whether you're for, against, or you're abstaining, please. Councillor Sutcliffe.
For.
Councillor Brockbank. For. Councillor Brown.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Harbron.
For.
Councillor Liss.
For.
Councillor Place. Councillor Place.
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
I'm afraid I'm against.
Councillor Rose,
Against.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Against.
Thank you. And Councillor Soloway, you're not voting, are you? So, right, if you just bear with me, I'll just add them up. So that's four members for the recommendation, 3 against and 2 abstentions.
So that application is approved then, is that correct?
Yes, I think so, Chairman.
Do we get
Thank
to
you.
vote on any of the other proposed amendments, or is that not in order?
I beg your pardon? Could you repeat that, Councillor Brown?
We had a number of amendments proposed and seconded. Do we get to vote on those or not? That's part of the reason I abstain.
Well, I asked if it was okay to go for a vote on the original approval and seconded and the motion, and the answer was yes, it was.
Alex, how do we?
Chairman, just to clarify, my understanding is that the vote went through in terms of officer recommendation. That was what first went. It was moved and seconded. Members have now decided on that matter, and it's been decided accordingly. So it wouldn't be appropriate to go to further vote on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In that case, the application is approved. Right. So over to you, Mr. Watson, shortly. Mr. Watson.
Sorry, Chairman, if I could just come in at this point. Mr. Cartwright and Mr. Bell, I will ask if it would be possible for you to leave the meeting now. You can continue to watch it live on the council's YouTube channel, but your attendance really was just for this particular item. Thank you.
So what's he asking for? They want to leave the meeting.
I've just asked Mr. Councillor Bell and William Cartwright whether they'd leave the meeting. They were here just in attendance for that particular.
Yes, I appreciate that. That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sutcliffe.
Councillor Watson.
Chairman, if you can just bear with me while I try and get the
We're having trouble with
PowerPoint.
the technical hitch, have we? Right.
Chairman, forgive me, I'm struggling with this again.
It looks promising on my screen.
Is it? Right, okay. Right, Chairman, this is an application, retrospective application for the construction of rear decking and fencing at 9A Black Abbey Lane. If members recall, this application was visited either earlier this year or late last year, and members had the opportunity of standing on the deck and looking into the neighbour's rear garden. And indeed, I believe they actually went into, well, not believe, they did, members did go into the adjoining garden and have a look at the impact of it. Members deferred consideration of the application and invited the applicant to effectively discuss matters with the neighbour with a view to reaching a mutually agreed position, or at least that was my expectation of what members' decision was. So you remember that the application is a new detached house built in the very large side garden of another property on Black Abbey Lane, with a public footpath running between the property as shown by the cursor. So that's the new house, and the decking to the rear and that's the neighbour's property and garden. So you've got a public footpath, you've got the decking to the rear of the new detached house, that's the neighbour's garage, and then the neighbour's house is situated in that location there, with the garaging to with the garden to the rear. That shows you the view of the neighbour's property, the new detached house, with the decking, which, because of the relative levels, is approximately 1 metre above garden level. And the issue that members were concerned about was the relative impact of being able to sit or stand on the raised decking and look into the neighbour's garden. So what the applicant has come up with is an extended fence above the level of the fence that exists at the moment, and I'll show you some photographs in a short period, is to prevent the direct overlooking from the deck into the neighbour's garden. That's the view from the garden on the other side. That's the right-hand side as you would look at the rear elevation. So you'll see from that there is the fencing level that exists at the moment and a proposed fence that would be 1.8 metres above the deck level, but the deck is 1 metre above the ground garden level. So members will recall standing on the decking, and that's the fence that is the current garden fence, and the proposal is to increase the fence so that it is 1.8 metres above the decking level, which will take the fence up to approximately, well, if you take that as a patio door, which will be slightly over 2 metres, the fencing level will be approximately there where I've shown the cursor at the moment, which is rather different to the position that you've got at the moment, where the deck is, you could stand on the deck and effectively look down into the neighbour's garden. So the applicants have come up with a solution, but obviously the neighbours are still not satisfied that that protects their amenity. That is obviously their view. And that's the view from the deck. That's a photograph taken from the deck into the neighbour's garden. But what you would get is a fence that is 1.8 metres above the decking level, which would be approximately there, which would prevent the significant overlooking of the neighbour's garden. I don't know what the neighbour's ultimate solution would be, but clearly they are still objecting to the application. Notwithstanding that, we have recommended approval of the application, quite simply because we've recommended approval of the application that is in front of you in the photograph that was taken there. But obviously that was a view that members didn't agree with. So that's what the proposal is. It is a solution that, as officers, we believe will protect the amenity of the neighbour, but the neighbour is not happy. Given that I had authority to approve the application in consultation with you, Chairman, subject to agreement being reached, and agreement hasn't been reached, I was not prepared to interpret how members may have viewed that revised amendment. And therefore that's why the application is back in front of members this afternoon. I've nothing further to add to the report, Chairman. The recommendation is to approve the application.
Thank you for your presentation. I do recall that discussion, Neville, and I agree with you that it was appropriate to bring it back to committee because what seemed to be a failure to achieve full agreement had come about. Okay. So now, members, following the normal format, am I right in assuming, Vicky, that we have nobody from the parish council, nobody from on behalf of the objector, and no applicant or agent representation?
That's correct, Chairman.
But we do have Councillor Mark Wheeler, so I think it's appropriate now for the ward rep to make his contribution. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members, for reconsidering this resubmitted retrospective application to kind of try and right the wrong of the unauthorised structure. I appreciate it's taken up quite a lot of your time. for quite a small scale application. But well, I mean, small scale applications, we mustn't underestimate the impact they have on the individual as opposed to the impact that large scale applications have. So in some respects, taking the time is probably quite right as far as this is concerned. Just to remind members that the original report did not accept the assertions that Mr. and Mrs. Davis at number 11 were overlooked with the unauthorised decking. However, we did have a site visit, and you may be able to recall standing on the decking was rather like being on an observation platform. And we got a right old eyeful of the garden of number 11, which didn't exist before 9A came along and built the non-approved decking that was, and may I remind you, 1.2 metres deeper and 0.2 metres higher than the approved original patio. The committee sent the retrospective application back to the applicant to consult with the Davises back in February, March. This discussion with the Davises was pretty scant, to be honest, and the developer had to be pursued to get the revised scheme in before the deadline elapsed. But this is the scheme that we're looking at today. Before us goes some way in mitigating the denuding of the amenity of the Davises. However, I think if we'd have been a bit more sympathetic to the concerns of the residents of number 11 when 9A was being built, we might have avoided all of this. Relations between the residents of 9A and 11 might not be as cool as they are now, and unfortunately we have seemingly created a neighbourly dispute. Anyway, the solution that's put in front of us, we've been asked to approve, or you've been asked to approve, in my view, seemingly it just infers that we tend to be fairly agreeable to developers playing a bit fast and loose with what they should do when it's been approved, irrespective of whether it affects the amenity of neighbouring dwellings. And if it wasn't for the concerns of the neighbours at number 11, number 11A or number 11 being voiced by the local councillors, myself and Councillor Barrett, I suspect that the original application probably would have gone through on the nod, which would have been entirely wrong. Ordinarily, I'd ask you to reject the recommendation and actually request that the decking is restored back to the dimensions on the original application, as per the patio dimensions. However, having spoken to the Davises recently, I tend to view their attitude as of this moment in time, which actually life's too short, and we should begrudgingly accept this too little too late solution and just make the best of a bad situation. What I would urge this committee to do is ensure that this solution is of a design that is robust enough to withstand the inevitable autumn and winter wind buffeting it will get. And should the heightened fence not withstand the Black Abbey wind tunnel, then I think we need to make sure that we conditioned enforcement that the fence be reinstated within a week or 2 weeks to ensure that the amenity of the residents is protected at number 11. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much. So on that note, we'll now go out to the debate. I've got Councillor Brockbank's hand up first. When you're ready, Councillor Brockbank.
Sorry about the delay. I'm using two screens because I'm still testing the proposal for the new hardware for members, and I just had a bit of difficulty getting my my cursor to jump from one screen to the next. Right. Yes, this application, the way I looked at it was, you know me, I'm not a fan of people building things without approved planning. But in this particular case, I've looked at the existing planning application that this applicant has already approved and compared that to the one in front of us. If we, for example, was to refuse this one today and there were no further submissions, the existing application that the applicant has would result in more overlooking and less privacy for the neighbours than the one in front of us today. So I'm going to propose, remembering that at the planning committee where the neighbours were present and they were genuinely upset at the degree of overlooking, and I always remember that. And so this application in front of us will mean less overlooking. Therefore, I am going to propose that we approve this application as it stands, but taking into account Councillor Wheeler's concerns about any damage done to that fencing. We must make sure, and I think I can't find where it says in here, but it does say that the height of the fence has to be a certain height to maintain that privacy. So I just want confirmation before I do actually propose it, confirmation that the height of the fence, am I correct in thinking that the height of the fence, the length of the fence, if it was to be damaged, that we can enforce that height remains in order to maintain the privacy of the neighbours? Could I do that? And then if that is the case, then I'm happy to propose it.
Right, well, can I get a quick opinion from Mr. Watson then, because I would have thought you could have put a condition in that the fence had to be a certain height and had to be maintained at that height in perpetuity. But Mr. Watson, your opinion, please.
Chairman, I can offer you that reassurance. There is a suggested condition 3 that says within 3 months of the date of this permission, the extended southwest boundary hereby approved shall be erected in accordance with the approved plans. So that gives us the height of it, and retained as such thereafter. So, you know, if it did fall down or they attempted to take it away, we would have an enforceable condition that would secure the replacement of that fence in perpetuity.
Thank you. Councillor Rockbank, do I take it then that you're moving approval? Does that give you the reassurance you're looking for?
Yes, it does. Yes. I mean, is it acceptable that for Councillor Wheeler? Am I allowed to ask that question?
No, Councillor Wheeler's made his contribution and he was quite clear in what his thoughts were. Are you moving approval or not, please?
I am, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, on that basis, I'll second it from the chair. And that gives me Councillor Shuttleworth, I think you're top of the queue here.
Yes, Chairman. I find this solution to a problem interfering with the neighbour's amenity to be absolutely horrendous. A 10-foot high fence flanking a public footpath. There is, as Councillor Wheeler said, the risk of wind damage, which I think will be quite frequent in typical Craven winters. But it's interesting, isn't it, that the balcony that's been constructed is considerably higher than that permitted under the General Development Order, which dimension is 600 millimetres above surrounding ground level. And in fact, the plans that were initially approved for the building, including a patio area, haven't been complied with. I honestly feel that that balcony should be taken down or reduced in height, modified to give a permitted development height. I really do. It might mean more steps down from the patio doors down to the platform, but it would solve the problem of overlooking with the neighbour to the southwest. And I shall be opposing Councillor Brockbank's motion.
Thank you for that contribution. Councillor Wheeler has been heavily involved here, and he made quite clear what his wishes were when he spoke as ward representative. Councillor Rose, I've got you next.
Thank you, Chair. Yet again, I'd like to make the point that an application has been changed between application and delivery, i.e. building of the patio, decking, whatever we want to call it. And I do increasingly find this a worry, that an application is approved by the committee, by the officers, and then whoever is doing the building, the developing, squeezes in an extra here, something here or there. And I do think it's a great shame that the decking, the patio, has ended up by being taller, higher than originally planned. So I know that can't be changed at this immediate moment. Ideally, it should be reduced in height to what was originally granted permission for. However, I take on board what Councillor Wheeler has just told us, and it saddens me that the neighbours have agreed that this enormous and somewhat overbearing fence will be the answer, that it's too little too late. I do think it is a shame that it's ended up the way it has and what we have in front of us today. I feel unsure now as to how to vote, having heard Councillor Wheeler's comments from today, and I don't, if we're helping to prevent any further neighbourly upset, fair enough. I always feel that if we can help alleviate neighbourhood distress, that's a good thing. Generally, I'm just not happy with the way that matters have progressed. So I'm expressing again my dislike of the way applications get changed, shall we say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I've got Councillor Pringle next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've spent quite a long time liaising with Councillor Wheeler on this one, and whilst my initial thoughts were the same as Councillor Shuttleworth's, it's a big, ugly fence. The truth is that the big, ugly fence is the best solution to a problem, because if we do what Councillor Shuttleworth said and make the man lower the decking and make it smaller, he can still see over the fence. That's the problem. The only way we can get a big fence where he can't see anything is to let him keep the decking. And this has been discussed, as I understand it, by Councillor Wheeler with the objector. And the thing that hasn't been made 100% clear, if I'm understanding it rightly, is that the objector has recognised that this is the best solution to a problem. The problem was set 2 years ago when the original planning was passed with a decking that he could see into the neighbour's garden. And if we go back and make him take the decking down and make it smaller, he'll be able to see in the neighbour's garden. And the objector, as I understand it, has understood that and has said, all right, I accept it. So whilst I'd love to agree with Councillor Shuttleworth, I will be voting with Councillor Brockbank. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. I must say I agree with you. I was also involved in discussions with Councillor Wheeler, and he's had a very difficult job to do. I think you would agree over the last few, well, months, not weeks. Right, Councillor Soloway, you're top of the queue now.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, my own, I think I'm minded to not only support the ward council on this, but support Councillor Brockbank's proposal. My concern, and maybe it'll help, in terms of having this fence built substantial enough, we have not got to forget that this fence adjoins a public right of way, and those public right of ways are long fought over and should be enforced. So there's potential for joint working here, making sure that not only do we make sure that this fence is strong enough, but we will liaise with the county council and the footways that if any damage causes to this fence, there is a liability issue here. We need to protect our public right of way and make sure that they're safe for people to use, even when it's windy.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I've got Alex Strickland wanting to say something, and then I'm going to go to the vote. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to remind members that they need to consider the application that is in front of them. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that brief comment. I think we're well aware of that, actually. But anyway, on that basis now, then I'm going to go to Councillor Shuttleworth. You've suddenly sprung up here. Do you want to have a quick word before we go to a vote?
Yes, a very quick word, Chairman. In addition to an attempt to reduce the loss of amenity to the neighbour, I can't help but feeling that a 10-foot high fence is not enhancing the amenity of the general neighbourhood. And it's not something that we should be encouraging. Because before we know where we are, back gardens will all have 10-foot fences in. And that is not going to be a good thing generally. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that note. Vicky Davis, I'm going to go to the vote now, if you could perhaps arrange that. It's moved and seconded for approval.
Yes, it has, by Councillor Brockbank and yourself as a seconder. Okay, so I'll just go through the list of councillors then. So we're the recommendation is to approve it with the conditions as set out in the officer's report. So, Councillor Sutcliffe.
For.
Councillor Brockbank.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Very reluctantly for.
Councillor Harbron.
Yeah, 4 for me as well. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Liss.
For.
Councillor Place.
Vicky, I think Councillor Place may have been experiencing some issues with his connection. It may well be that he's left the meeting at this point.
Okay, all right. Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Rose.
Abstain.
Councillor Shuttleworth. Councillor Shuttleworth.
You need to unmute. Brian.
You need to unmute Councillor Shuttleworth.
Yep, against.
Again, okay, thank you. And Councillor Soloway.
For.
Okay, thank you. So that is 4 against the approval, 1 against and 1 abstention. Thank you, Chairman.
So that application is approved now then. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you for your appearance. We've had so much discussions, we'll miss you from now on. Right, Mr. Watson, over to you for the final application, which is back in Skipton. Mr. Watson, are you still with us? Are you perhaps struggling with technology again?
Have we got the PowerPoint?
I think we're waiting for you to share the screen, Neville. There we go.
Have we got that now?
Yeah, it's come up now, Neville. Thank you.
Right, okay, thanks. Right, Chairman, this application is before members because the applicant is actually Craven District Council. It's a simple and straightforward application for an one directional sign on Snakehill Industrial Estate. So there's Keithley Road coming into the industrial estate, and the easiest way I can show you is that it's at the bottom there where the cursor is. Simple sign directing people to the various parts of the business park, and it would be located in that position there. When we're looking to help businesses and move things forward and hopefully get out of this position that we're in at the moment, we need really to direct people to business opportunities and economic activity, and therefore the simple recommendation is to approve the application, Chairman.
Thank you for that presentation. We have nobody in terms of parish council, objector, applicant or ward council, so we can go straight to the debate. Members, if anybody wishes to speak, I'll look out for a blue flag coming up. Councillor Shuttleworth, followed by Councillor Pringle and Councillor Brown. It's like watching the finish of a horse race here, the way these arrows come up a split second apart. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Chairman, move approval as per the proposal.
Thank you very much. I'll second that from the chair. I think it's a good idea and it will help businesses on the industrial estate. Councillor Pringle, you've indicated a wish to speak.
To be fair, I wanted to second it, but you've stolen me thunder. So I'll disappear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rose.
Just like to make the point, it is in my ward. Thank you.
Thank you. So do I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Rose, are you happy to? We've got a proposal, but I haven't a seconder. Are you happy to second the motion?
I thought you'd seconded it, Chairman.
Oh, I did. Sorry, I'm getting carried away here. Right. In that case, then, Vicky, when you're ready, we'll go to a vote.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just call out your name again in order. If you can just say whether you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Sutcliffe.
For.
Councillor Brockbank.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Harbron.
For.
Councillor Liss.
For.
Councillor, well, Councillor Place has left, hasn't he? Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Rose.
For.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
For.
And Councillor Stalloway.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So that's approved unanimous.
Thank you.
I think that perhaps concludes business for today. Guy, does it not?
I think that's all the business for today's meeting. So I'll just ask Jenny if she wouldn't mind very shortly closing the meeting on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you very much.